You're listening to United We Stand, Divided We Podcast. This is episode 4.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to United We Stand, Divided We Podcast. This is episode number 4. I'm Robert from the U.S., and with us we have Lionel from Canada. What's up, Lionel?
Well, what's up is I still have the hoarse voice, as I'm still not quite even in recovery mode of what's going on with me. But nonetheless, I just sound like one of them gruffly old guys. So that's okay. But briefly, before we get into what we're going to be doing today, if anybody notices that you also have a bit of a hoarse voice today, you could tell them really briefly why you do. And I think it's pretty good news for anybody who lives in the same area that you do.
Well, I call this hockey horse because I've been screaming last night for the 8 goals my team scored against our opposing team, which
Thankfully
was the
not
lowly
mine.
San Jose Sharks.
Well, no offense to anyone living in San Jose or California at all, but the Preds, they were phenomenal last night. They really were, and I know you don't believe that, Robert. But
they were phenomenal the second half.
They
the first half.
Okay, fair enough.
I was telling them how bad they were doing.
Yeah, I guess the point is people have noticed is that you were actually at the game. You weren't just watching on TV. I can get hockey horse from screaming at the TV, no problem, because I don't live in Winnipeg and the Jets are my team. But
yes, I was at the game.
When you're actually at the game, that's a totally different kind of hockey horse.
Totally I'm a very emotional participant, and I tend to be very boisterous and loud. And the whole first half of the game, I was screaming at them to get their together, and then they did. And so then I take full responsibility for the recovery. I do, because they must have heard me screaming from the rafters.
That's got to be it. Anyways, with that said, I do think, interestingly, we could go on for quite a bit in a future episode about sports in Canada and the United States, and some of the connections people don't even realize are there when they don't think they are. There's a whole lot of things. We can get into that another time. For today, we actually, I'm looking at the wrong list, so excuse me while I move over. First thing we want to talk about is some misconceptions that Americans get about how Canadians talk, certain expressions they use, mostly in the partly in pronunciation. But a lot of that misconception is coming from Canadians, and it isn't always comedians making fun of ourselves. When it is, that's fine. So when you see comedians getting out there and saying, yeah, we're going to go to the store and it's going to be snowing a lot. We're going to get into a boot. You talk about a lot of things over there, eh? It's fine because they're being funny. And I don't even do the accent very well, and I'm Canadian. In any case, that said, there are other times where Canadians will come out in all seriousness, at least they're trying to be serious, on YouTube and give you a guide to what Canadians are supposed to actually sound like and not what Americans think we sound like. Like a video I saw where they said, we don't say a boot like a boot on your foot, but a boat, like a boat on the water. We don't say a boat. We say about, just like 90% of Americans. And I say 90% because there are accents here and there where it might change a little bit. And once again, I can get into Minnesota where they actually do say a little bit of a boot. They'll actually say, we got to go to the store. I was thinking that maybe we could talk about what you want. Not to be confused with Wisconsin, which is not too far away, but it's still that Midwestern, but they talk a little different up there in Wisconsin, right?
Yes. We have family in Wisconsin, so we go there often, and some people have super strong accent.
Now, I try to shoot down the misconception that Canadians are always saying "hey." Unfortunately, virtually every American that I know tells me that I just finished saying it a couple of seconds ago. And I'm like, what? Did I really? And they go, yeah, you don't even know you're saying it. So I have to admit,
I've
obviously,
caught
we
you.
say A.
Mhm. I've
Sorry, what's
caught you.
that? Yeah,
I've
you
caught
have
you saying it
on
sometimes.
on more than one occasion. Um,
Yes.
just so that people know, this is not something that goes up bigger, but I'm gonna bring because I have this on the list. The word Canuck is a slang term for Canadian. It actually is. It's not nearly used as much as it was back, I don't say mid-century, last century, mid 20th, maybe before, certainly a little after. We even had a comic book called Captain Canuck, and I thought it was going to be big. It was going to be huge. I met the
Is
author.
that like Captain Kangaroo here in the States? Sorry.
No, Captain Canuck is basically Mr. I was going to say Mr. America. No, Captain America, except he's Captain Canuck. Same idea, except he didn't have super serum. I'm not sure what made him super powerful. I actually had the original first edition comic signed in front of me by the actual creator of the comic. No idea why I let that go because the fact of the matter is there was only about 3 or 5 episodes or something like that or editions, and probably not more than 50,000 ever printed. I don't know the numbers, but they were low, obviously. It didn't go over. Um, but as collectors, it would be worth a little something now if you had an original signed first edition. It was literally handed to me by the creator. But I bring that up because if you are a hockey fan, at least NHL hockey fan, you're familiar with the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks were the fourth, pardon me, that makes me sound like an idiot, the fourth Canadian NHL team. But at the time, they would have been the third because the fourth one was defunct. The Ottawa Senators, the original Senators, weren't around very long. So in the modern NHL era, the Canucks were the third behind the Canadians and the Maple Leafs. So why would they call themselves anything other than a Canadian name? That's why they're the Canucks. Just so everybody knows that one.
Yeah,
Um,
I until I looked at this, I did not know that Canuck was a slang term for Canadian.
yeah, it's amazing. Some people don't know that. There are Americans who do, and they say, "Oh, those crazy Canucks," but they don't really know why they're saying it. They just figure it's a slang term, and there's no meaning to it. There is a story behind it. I don't really honestly know it. I don't think most Canadians do. I just know that it's something that we've used. It's kind of like Yankee. What is a Yankee? Right? Technically speaking, originally a Yankee wasn't in the American, but most Canadians, and I'm guessing most Americans don't know that either, because the Yankees were only in the North at one point. Is that not correct?
Oh, yeah, that's why you're only a Yankee if you live above the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, except that that's not technically. Well, it may technically be correct, but outside of America, anyways, everyone's either a Yankee or if you're south of the border, a gringo. Uh, non-Mexican, by the
Yeah,
way.
that's yeah,
Gringo,
in the
for anyone who
States, we
doesn't
consider a
understand,
Yankee above Mason-Dixon line,
yeah,
below
for anyone who
Mason-Dixon.
doesn't understand Mexico, by the way, gringo isn't technically a racist term. It just means you're not Mexican, period. It's really, I mean, it's kind of a dirty way to say it, but they don't really mean anything. They just say you just call you gringo because you're not from here. And so gringo. But we're not talking about Mexico. Now, there's some other ones in here that I don't even really understand myself because they haven't been said since the 80s or earlier. Clicks, by the way, you know what a click is?
When I saw that, the only thing that comes to mind is a clicker in the in the
No,
last
I thought you were going to say something like Shawn Michaels and Diesel and and and
No,
and
no,
and the Click and the WWE. No, not that kind of Click. Not your buddies. Click is just a weird way. I don't know why they decided to say Click. I guess because it fit in. It's just short for slang for kilometers. So if somebody says, "Oh yeah, we're 50 clicks
ah,
out," 50 kilometers. But the thing is, I believe it probably came up from military because they would just try to be quick. And all militaries around the world basically use kilometers when not
yeah,
over
yeah, yeah.
American soil or air because it's universal. All airlines use nautical miles, but ground speed is in clicks or kilometers, right? Um,
Well, now that you say that, you know, you do see, a lot of movies that are made, that the, like, military movies where they refer to the distance as it's 2 clicks, so that makes sense now.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you might wanna look that up because, I'm about to get into another one in a second, and then maybe you can jump in if you wanna look it up at all, if you have a minute, as to how many clicks there are in a mile. I think it's I don't remember, to be honest. It's like 1.4 or 1.7 or something along that line. It's kinda similar to what you'd see in liters versus quarts versus, like a gallon. Like, we don't have a gallon of anything, so we'll just do 4 liters, which would be close to a gallon, but not quite.
So 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers or clicks.
1.6, okay, there you go.
So a click is equal to 0.62 miles.
Right, okay, so a little bit more than 50%. So if I go
Yeah,
2 kilometers, I've gone, over a mile by quite a bit, but not quite a mile and a half. So
yeah.
that gives you an idea of how that is. Now, interestingly enough, have you heard the term hoser other than looking at the list today?
I used to say it all the time in high school. You
Uh,
hoser.
Now, was it because of SCTV?
No, there was actually, and I can't remember the name of this band for the life of me, but there was a Canadian band that had a song about the Great White North, and one of their lines in it was about a hoser. And it was a funny as
Let me
hell,
let
and
me
I used to love it. It was funny.
hang on. That is technically kind of from SCTV because both of those characters were invented for SCTV, and they came up with the song, and they got Geddy Lee to sing the song for them, at least the high parts of the song. "Take off to the great white north, take off, it's a beauty way to go." You remember that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Usually, I listen to that every Christmas along with the 12 Days of Christmas that they also did on that same Christmas album. Bob and Doug McKenzie is what you're talking about. Um,
Okay. I couldn't remember it for the life of me. I just remember it was a funny song, and we used to
"Yeah,
laugh
take
about it.
off, eh?" He's such a
Yeah.
hoser, "Take off, eh?"
Yeah,
What in
exactly.
here in this list, it's got
Yes,
written,
yes.
"Hoser is an unsophisticated person," and most people will say that when they don't know. A hoser isn't necessarily an unsophisticated person. A hoser can be a perfectly sophisticated person. If you're basically a jack off, a jerk, a goof, or whatever, you're a hoser.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah,
have to be
that's
you don't
what
have
I
to be a
always
jack off.
and to that's what I always thought the slang was for, is like asshat.
Yeah, basically, yeah, that's a better way to put
Yeah.
it. Ass hat, it's something like that. It just means
Yeah.
you're not necessarily the worst, but you sure as hell ain't on my list right now, right?
You're just acting like it at the moment.
Yeah, so you could be a hoser or you could be acting like a hoser, and it
Yes.
could be a horrible thing or just a small insult. So it doesn't
Yeah.
by any stretch of the imagination. Uh, getting
Hilarious.
just on my computer while I'm doing this, and it's like, okay. Anywho, um, okay. Have you ever heard Keener?
No, that one I've never
Keener.
heard. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna
neither
start
have I.
using it because I like that it's a bootlicker. I'm gonna start using you keener.
Oh, well, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I have heard it, but I believe this is so old that no Canadian says it anymore. It's kind of like saying Neato and Keen. I mean, like, you just don't do that. Like, even in the late '70s, if you said Neato, you got beat up in the schoolyard. If you were that age. I was. So, uh, you know what? This is where this person, the video I saw, I think they were looking at this list and they copied it because they did it in the same order. They call this
Oh, really? That's
Muscle.
funny.
The Pot Belly. Molson is a Canadian brand of beer. Molson is not the only beer we drink, but over the last 15 or 20 years or so, Molson is probably the least drank beer by anyone who has taste buds. So, again, I'm not trying to rag down on Molson. When I was younger, I drank myself some Molson, just not Molson Canadian, because it tastes like water with a little beer added to it. I don't like it. Um, it's the way it is. Canadians were for years, we always bragged our beer is stronger than American beer, so why drink the weaker stuff? Um, that's my thing. I don't know
See,
what's
I never knew that people considered "for sure" a Canadian slang. I just thought that was something people said, but
well,
I
that's
guess it
because
makes sense why they go, "For
that's
sure, eh?"
because we that's because that is one of the Canadian things that it still gets said, it just doesn't have the same accent and quite the same inflection as it used to be. Because we used to say "for sure," like, there was totally a Canadian accent in it. It'd be,
I
so,
see.
like, you'd say, "Oh, are you gonna go to the game today?" To be, for sure, eh?" You know, "You gonna go get are you gonna go pick up a 2-4? For sure, eh?" Yeah, so that is a Canadian thing. That was very Canadian, and it was huge in the '80s and '90s, obviously before that. It just means definitely or for certain, um, but people will still say, "Oh, for sure." But that's how you say it now. Pretty much the same thing anybody in the Midwest in America would say.
Yeah, I say "for sure" all the time.
Yeah, you just probably never said it for sure, eh?
No, not followed by "a," but I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start.
Yeah. And as for this one here, to be on Pogie, meaning to be on welfare, never in my life have I heard that. Most people just say, I'm on welfare," or "He's on welfare," or "She's on welfare." And in all honesty, if you don't know somebody personally on welfare at the moment, uh, uh, you don't really talk about it a lot.
Right.
Why would
No.
you even say it? It's like,
Right.
unless you wanna be a jerk off and make fun of people who are on it, because some people do need it, and
Then
I
you'd be
don't
a
blame
hoser.
you. Yeah, that's right, yeah, you make fun of somebody, and you're just being a hoser, eh? For sure, eh? Okay. We won't even get into
Uh,
the other stuff. This is obvious. Mickey's is just a 375 milliliter or 13-ounce bottle of liquor. You guys have small liquor bottles too. I don't even know what you call it. The small ones that have that concave shape that you can grab
yeah, I
on.
don't know.
I don't know what it is. I think it might be is it a no, it's not a pint. It's like it'd be only like a half a pint or a quarter of a
A
pint or
fifth?
something.
What's a fifth?
It
I
could
don't
be a
know.
fifth. I don't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure. It's small. It's something that a heavy drinker can just down that in a couple of gulps and it's gone. I mean, it's 13 ounces of whatever it is, which might sound like a lot, but depending on what it is, maybe not, right? 2 4 being a 24 bottles of beer or 24 cans of beer in this day and age. So, and no, we do actually say arse and bum, but mostly older people. Otherwise, you're an ass hat, like you said. Or you're a bum on the street, or this is you have an ass or a bum, sorry. Um,
Yeah, I say arse all the time. But hey, just so a fifth is 750 milliliters.
750, and this was, oh, yeah, okay, so this is half. That's half that. Half a fifth then. So I don't know, I guess you must have a half a fifth or whatever you would call it there, I would assume.
Yes.
It can't be a Canadian thing only, a small bottle of whiskey or whatever. Because 'cause I've seen it in movies where a guy has it in a bag, and and it's like a flat looking bottle. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Here, see, half a fifth of liquor. Yeah,
Why does it say app is not focused? For forgive
because it's
me,
not your main tab.
it's the only tab I have. It's go figure.
Yeah, not clicked on it. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not a big drinker, so I don't know.
Well, I'm not a drinker at all, so, we'll move on. Okay, this is really important. Canadians don't eat back bacon, and here's why. There's no such bloody thing.
I never even heard of that until I saw
There
that. I
is
don't even know what that
technically
is.
back bacon, but back bacon is actually side bacon, not back bacon, because it comes more from the side than the back, although slightly off of it. It's
But
not
what's the
very
difference
far.
between a Canadian bacon and American bacon? Aren't they
Hang on a
both made
second.
from pigs?
Back bacon is supposed to be Canadian bacon, but I'm just getting into that. It's not very far from where you find the strip bacon part. It's just that it's off a different level where it doesn't have the fat veins going through it, so it's not the same. So what you actually are getting, in reality, is freaking ham. Yes, Canadians will eat it, but no, it's not our thing. Bacon, just like you guys eat, Strip bacon is still the bomb. I want bacon and eggs. If I decide I want to have a piece of ham with it, we call it pea
Yeah.
meal bacon or pea meal ham. It's just that same slice we talked about rolled in pea meal, which is actually kind of tasty when it's fried up. But it's still not bacon.
So if I come up and visit and someone says, would you like to order? And I say, oh, for sure, eh? Give me some back bacon, eh? They'll say, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, no, they won't say what the hell you're talking about, but they know you're American because you would never say it like that. You started out good.
I wouldn't say
Yeah,
it anyway.
yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah,
say, give me
yeah,
some bacon.
yeah, yeah. I have some eggs and pea meal, eh? G'day. I'll have some. But if you do it right, you might make them think that you're from the Maritimes, Newfoundland or
Oh,
something like that. But anywho, I
funny.
have absolutely no idea why we have an icing sugar listed as powdered sugar or vice versa. Do you guys not
Yeah.
call it icing sugar there at all?
No, I've never heard icing
Really?
sugar.
Wow, that's
No.
crazy. Because what do you make icing with? Or frosting, if you want to call it that, because you do have icing, right? It depends
Well,
on where
I
you
go to the
go.
I go to the store and buy those Pillsbury containers that I just scoop it
Oh,
out and
yeah, okay.
don't
Well,
make
that's always
icing.
those ones are always called frosting, but icing, frosting is the same damn thing, and it's
Yeah.
always
Uh-huh.
made with powdered sugar, which is
Right.
for some
Yes,
reason
I
also
do know
called
that. I do
icing
know that.
sugar. So, um, now I guess you guys actually do call it powdered non-dairy creamer? That sounds very unappetizing. That powdered crap you put in coffee because 'cause you're too lazy to buy milk, you know what I'm
Okay,
talking
and
about.
so first off, I don't know that I've ever heard that. I do drink coffee, but again, I don't use non-dairy.
Yeah,
I don't
neither neither do I.
yeah,
We call it
I don't
whitening, right?
understand.
We,
I just
however
say I want some creamer.
creamer makes sense. Non-dairy creamer, or you just say creamer. We call it whitener for some reason. We will say creamer. People will say that here, but it's
Yeah.
known as whitener. It even say that on the packaging. I don't even know why, to be honest, this is on the list because you'd have to be an idiot to not understand it if you're actually in the grocery store and see the product. It would be pretty obvious one way or the other, what it was. Um, Now the interesting thing is I've been wrong for years. As it turns out, I thought American cheese was virtually any cheese that was basically made in America, but not made in a European fashion. It turns out American cheese is cheese slices. I did not know that. So even if I'm eating Canadian cheese slices, it's technically American cheese, but made in
Uh,
Canada. I didn't know
Interesting.
that.
I didn't know that either.
That's totally new to me. We call it processed cheese. So what?
Yeah, I just assumed American cheese was a non-sharp type cheese. It was, processed differently than,
Yeah,
like,
the
if I
interesting
got a
thing is
piece of cheddar cheese or something, you know?
yeah, the interesting thing about the processing is it doesn't make it any less cheese. It's just that there's actually less cheese in the slice. It's hard to explain. There's a certain chemical process they put in it, which is completely safe, totally edible. Nothing carcinogen. You want to help me out here? Carcin.
Carcinogenic?
Thank you. Nothing like that. But what it does do is it allows it to be softer and melt easily. So it can easily
Ah,
be
yes.
sliced thin and melt easily and so on and so on. And this is what it is. So it's still pure cheddar or pure white cheddar or pure whatever it is they're making it out of, right? Um, okay, no, there's no way. Are you guys serious? Or is this list this stupid? Do you guys actually
I
say candy bar and never use the term chocolate bar ever?
I've never used the term ch chocolate bar. I've always said
Really?
candy bar.
But what if it's made out of chocolate and not candy?
Chocolate is candy.
Candy? Well, no, actually, it's not. And
When
I
it's
know
in a
this
bar and you unwrap it,
as
it's
someone who
candy.
used to be a chocolatier or a chocolatier. I used to mix chocolate. That's what I did. Chocolate is not candy. And unbeknownst to most people, there is way less sugar in chocolate than people think. There's way more sugar in everything. The reason why chocolate seems to be so fattening is partly because of cocoa butter, but mostly because if people like chocolate and they get addicted to it like me, you eat way more chocolate than you would hard candies. Like you could suck on 3 or 4 hard candies and go, okay, I'm done, right? Even if you have a sweet tooth. But you eat a chocolate bar and you're like, you got a little extra weight on you and it's a pandemic. you, you eat several of them in a couple of days and it
Yeah,
adds up.
I've never said, "Give me
Yeah.
a chocolate bar," ever. It's always a candy bar. And
Wow.
they'll say, "What kind
Okay.
of candy bar do you want?" I'll say, "Oh, give me a Hershey's or
Okay.
give me a Snickers."
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah. If you're looking at something specific, of course, like for instance, if I want a Hershey, it better not have no damn nuts in it. I just want my normal Hershey. Which, by
I
the
wanna
way,
know, do you
you
guys
have to
actually call your
practically.
milk
Sorry.
I wanna know, do you guys actually call your whole milk Homo milk?
Oh, I was just about to get to that, but you know what? I'm going to put you on hold on that one for a second because I really want to know why in the heck this list thinks that Canadians only say brown bread as opposed to whole wheat bread. There's actually a difference. Brown bread can be 60% or even 30%. If I want brown bread, I'm going to ask for 60%, which basically has a slightly more, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, there's a little more flavor in the bread than white bread, but it doesn't
Mm,
taste like whole wheat. So it's kind of like a cross between. So you can give your kids more healthy bread without forcing them into whole wheat bread. But for some reason,
yeah.
this list has it listed as whole wheat in America, brown in Canada. It's
I've never
completely
heard the term
incorrect.
brown bread ever.
That's because it's not called that here either. Like you go to the store right now and it'll actually say whole wheat bread. And you,
Yeah.
of course, will but as I said, find 60% whole wheat bread too. But, nonetheless, moving on to the milk. It's a slang term.
Oh, I
It
get it's
means
slang, but
it means
is it a
homogenized.
popular
It
slang?
means fully whole homogenized,
Right.
as in whole milk. It actually says whole milk on the packaging. It just happens to be that we call it because it'll say homogenized in big letters, which is kinda dumb because all milk is homogenized or it's not getting sold. Right? Um, but it's not skimmed. I mean, it is technically skimmed because if it wasn't, you'd have cream, right? Or at least it'd be closer to
Right.
cream. Um, but if you then got your 3%, your 2%, and your 1%. Let me no, that's not true. Whole milk, 3%, 2%, water percent. Well, sorry, just 1% is tastes like water.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
it's
we have
healthier. It's
0%
not
too,
as
so
fattening. It's not as fattening as well, I gotta tell you something, when your kids are growing up, they should be drinking some milk, and 2% is better than 1% for that. "Oh, well, it's for me then." "Well, how often do you drink it?" "Oh, I might have a little bit, like, maybe a glass every 3 weeks." I said, "Then why the hell do you drink 1%? You gonna get fat from drinking 1 glass of milk every 3 weeks?" I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. It really does
yeah.
not. So,
Yeah,
that's
my grandkids do whole milk. I'll do 2%, just because I like the consistency of 2%, I like the way it tastes, but, you know
all right. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna skip a couple of these because some of these are really dumb, really, really dumb. Um, let's go into academia here. Sorry for me looking down here, but I gotta be able to see this with my old man face. So if you're taking a test without looking at the list yourself, um, sorry. Well, I guess I will say it that way. You're in school and there's a test being given out. How do you describe partaking in the test in the
taking a
shortest way
test?
possible? Taking a test.
Yeah, I don't
According to this list, Canadians only say write a test. Why the hell would I say that if I wasn't writing though? Not every test is a written test. Um,
yeah, I don't know. I just it's always just taking a test. I don't
eh, what the heck is to proctor an exam?
Oh, so you don't know what proctoring an exam is?
I actually
So,
don't.
okay, so when you have a proctor, so for example, they did this a lot during COVID where because my stepdaughter, when she was still finishing her master's, she would have to get into a room like that had nothing in it. You'd get on
Right.
your webcam, and you had to do all this different stuff to your computer to make sure, it wasn't like you weren't cheating. And there was a proctor on the other end watching you take the test.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
proctoring a test.
So, I may butcher this word in the Canadian term apparently is invigilate an exam. Not sure
Yeah.
why they wouldn't just use the same term. Um,
Yeah, I don't
I've never heard the word
oh,
invigilate in my life. So,
neither have I.
uh, tutorial versus recitation. Let's not even go there because
Okay, I've
I've
never heard
never
of
heard
recitation.
anyone. I was just gonna say, I'm going on YouTube because I wanna check out some recitations or recitations
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm checking out some YouTube
Yeah.
recitations.
I don't know
Uh,
what I've never heard that word my entire life, so I don't even know what that means.
okay, now there's another misconception in here, and this is why I don't like these lists. Somebody will read this and say, "Oh, this is how I'm supposed to talk if I'm Canadian." It says marking a test versus grading a test. Guess those are not the same thing. If you're grading a test, you're actually grading a test. If you're marking a test, you know what you do? If you're teaching fifth graders or sixth graders, you mark the test.
Right,
If
and you show them, "Here's this,
final
here's that, here's
exams,
this, here's what." Yeah,
final
yeah,
exams
yeah.
in sixth grade, final exams in seventh grade, anything from eighth grade and up, you have to grade the exams. You can't mark them. You can
Yeah, and
mark
you
the test.
don't
You
mark
mark
what's
a test.
wrong. Y
Yeah, exactly. You mark a test, but you have to grade an exam. If you don't grade it,
Yeah,
then you're doing nothing for the student whatsoever. So
yeah,
that's not a thing. Marking a test is not the same as grading a test. And usually you don't grade a test, you grade an exam, you mark a test. It's true, right? In reality. Because I mean, if the
yeah.
test is meant for an exam, it's an exam. An exam
Right.
test maybe, but it's an exam. It's ridiculous. Public school versus elementary school. This is not right. This is incorrect. I
Yeah.
don't know how many times I've heard people in America say, "What the hell is elementary school?" It's because
But see, that doesn't make sense because I mean, that's all I've ever referred to it as
I know,
elementary,
right?
middle school, high
But
school.
I've heard of some people, they're making it sound like Canadians don't know it, and they only say public school. Public school is any school that is a public school. It's not
Right,
run by the
you have
Christian organization.
elementary in
It's not
public
a
and
Jewish
private.
it's not the Jewish or, what do you call it, school board or the Catholic school board or a Muslim school board or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a public school. So you're in public school, and it could be anywhere from kindergarten or even nursery. I don't know if you guys have nursery there, by the way. I'm assuming you do, but I don't know if it's part of your school system. Depending on the region in
Um,
Canada, it's sometimes
yeah,
it's part of the school system, and in other regions, it's not. You have to pay for it separately. So,
it's not you don't it's 1st
well,
grade is technically,
yeah.
or preschool is technically the first, like,
Yeah, nursery is
school,
basically like a
and
preschool, but is
okay.
it's structured to mainly take care of the kids and kinda sorta teach them what kindergarten is gonna be about. And
And so, see,
kindergarten
we would
is
call nursery then daycare.
yeah, what it is, most of the time it is here. Not everywhere is there a nursery.
Yeah.
It's not everywhere. Um, some school like, it was popular in the '70s more than it is now. Supply teacher versus substitute. I have never in my life tried to get up and irritate the supply teacher. I have shot
Yeah,
spitballs at the substitute. I've
yeah.
never in my life seen a supply teacher, unless it was the guy who actually operated the supply room in school,
Right,
and he was asked to step in to watch us for an hour,
yeah.
which has
Yeah,
happened.
I never heard that
Um,
either.
community college versus college. This is again, where did they come up with this crap? Community college is community college no matter where you are in the world. It means
Yeah.
it may be accredited, but it's not attached to a university or a major college. Now, that's the biggest thing in difference. Americans always say, I'm going to college. You don't hear them say, I'm going to university.
Right,
They might be going to university, but they always say, I'm going to college. But here's
right.
the thing, whether you're in America or in the States, in order to go into college, this particular college, for a law degree, that college is part of a university. That's just true. Right?
Yeah, I've never
Like,
referred to it as university.
if
I
you
to
went if
me,
you went
when
to
you go to college, you could go to, "Oh, are you going to community college or are you going to a 4-year college?" And we always
well,
refer,
you
at
go
least I've always
yeah,
heard it as
exactly.
a 4-year college.
Where did you go, to co if you don't mind my asking?
I didn't go to college.
Well, neither did I. Isn't that funny? Well, I mean, you know what? I did community college stuff a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you, I took some broadcasting. But, nonetheless, if you had
I did
gone,
some
did you have
correspondence
your eye
courses.
on a specific college when you were younger?
No.
Really?
but to be honest with you, I struggled in certain areas of school, and I just couldn't wait to get out of school, and I was like, "I'm not going back to school, so I'm not
Oh,
going to
okay.
college.
So
I'm gonna
even when
learn
you
a
were younger, you
trade." I
never
wanted
thought
to
you
learn a trade,
yeah, yeah,
but
that makes sense.
but that yeah, but that didn't
Yeah,
really
I never had my
I
eye
did not have a defined path, and I that was a huge mistake. Anybody young that's listening to this, go to school, find your path, and follow it. Don't just wander because it takes you nowhere.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that 100%. Um, and you know what? Depending on what you're doing, it doesn't always mean you have to go in for a 4-year program. If you
No,
know
no.
exactly what you wanna do, like, for instance, you wanna be an actor or in broadcasting, there are courses in accredited colleges all over North America that you can go to, and you can learn everything you need to know. There are, arts schools for the arts, if you wanna get into that kinda thing, and it doesn't always have to be Juilliard. You know, not everybody's good enough to get into Juilliard, but there are programs in Montreal, Toronto, New York, uh, Dallas, Los Angeles, Chicago. Probably, I'm guessing there's something either in or near Nashville that would also be probably good. I mean, you got so much, such a music scene out there. Is most likely you wouldn't have
Well,
to.
Belmont is a pretty, renowned school for the arts.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I mean. So there's always those opportunities, and some people are like, oh, I'm going to take a gap year. Take your gap year. If you've got the money or somebody can help you out, do it, but make a plan. Make a plan when your gap year's over. If you don't feel like you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that requires you to do a 4-year accreditation, then go to a community college or take a course in a specific thing. Get into a trade that doesn't necessarily mean 10 years to get into it, but do something and have something to fall back on, and you can do
Well,
all
and
the other
actually,
stuff later.
there's been such a big push for 4-year colleges that, and people just do it because they think they have to do it. There's
Yeah.
actually the workforce in the tradesmen's fields, electricians and plumbers and welders they're hurting. They don't have a lot of workers. So
Yeah,
there's been a
and
big
some
push like
yeah,
yeah.
they make good
Well,
money too.
my son that lives in New Orleans, Anthony, he went to school, was in college for a semester, and he's like, "Dad, I don't want to do this. I don't like this." I said, "Son, you don't have to go to 4-year school." I said, "But what you have to be is self-dependent. So you have to learn a trade that is good enough to support you financially that you can live on your own and be a productive member of the American society."
Yeah.
And so he actually went and um, did a apprenticeship under his uncle as a welder, became a very
Oh,
good
yeah,
welder,
no,
welding
no,
on, oil rigs and stuff like that, making 35,
right.
$45 an hour.
Yeah, and that's those are things that are good, and you know what? There are opportunities like that in Canada too. We say, "Oh, I have to go to the States for that." No, you don't. You just have to go to Alberta
Yeah.
or BC, get into the
Yeah.
fishing if you want. Do some of the, Atla or, Pacific fishing or, because at certain seasonal times, they need people. You can apprentice, get on a ship, go for a couple of seasons, and make massive amounts of money. Go home and
Yeah.
decide, "Okay, well, I'm gonna take a course in something else now and do something else." Again, this is not something for everybody, but we segue back out of that because we segued into it. It just seemed like a perfect time to make sure that
Yeah.
people who might be watching or are younger plan, have a plan. Doesn't have to be rock solid plan, but you got to have something to go on.
Yeah. Trade
Simple as that.
school,
Um,
community college, 4-year university, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Just, pick what you want
exactly.
to do. Try to find out what you want to
Oh,
pursue and pursue it regardless of what
yeah,
path it takes you to
and then
pursue it.
remember to pursue whether you need to say Z or Z. How's that for a segue? Z or okay, listen, if anybody wonders, of course, we say in Canada, we say Z simply because we do speak closer to what would be the Queen's English. Right? Actual British English, except without the accent. We spell our words the same way. We pronounce things for the most part the same way without the English accent. So Z is how it's said. So that's why when I say I had a Nikon Z6 II and I wanted to get a Nikon Z9, people say, "Don't you mean a Z9?" I said, "Yeah, if I'm in America, but it's also, by the way, Nikon." Not Nikon, but that's another story. Let's not get into that. That has nothing to do with America. Is it does most of the world
Yeah,
listen
well,
to
I'd
Nikon.
never heard Zed until you said it. I had no idea.
You know what? Just for giggles, I won't say the first word. I'm going to actually tell you how you're supposed to pronounce what people say is Hyundai or Hyundai or whatever. It's actually Hyundai.
Okay.
Yeah, just in case anyone is driving an Elantra or a Sonata or whatever.
Yeah, you know how
Hyundai.
I say Hyundai? Hyundai, you know how I say it? POS. That's what I say.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yes, you know exactly.
I
And I'm sure every one of
but
our viewers knows what POS means.
however, my car runs beautifully. I bought it already 4 years used, and I've had it for a year, and it runs like it's brand freaking new. Doesn't have a speck of rust on it. So, I
So
I
my
think
my my
I
my
would put my car on the track and beat yours, Mister Found on Road
well,
Day,
yes, because mine's a
or
mild
in reverse.
180 horsepower hybrid that
In re
can't
excuse
barely
me, I
beat
don't even
itself.
have 180 horsepower, but I could still beat your car. Anyways,
Okay.
I should say, found on road dead, I mentioned, but if you reverse that, it's driver returned on foot. So,
Mhm.
we well, hey, listen,
I've been a
you
very
know what?
successful Ford owner, thank you very much. I've had
And I've been a
many
very
Fords.
successful Hyundai owner, so there you go. Alright.
Fantastic. But I can tell you from my years of experience of working in a dealership when Hyundais first came out,
Oh, they were
they were
terrible.
absolute 100%
Garbage.
garbage,
Dude,
and
for
I
years.
have PTSD from it, and I could
Yeah,
never own a
listen,
Hyundai.
Hyundai and Kia were the laughing stock. I mean, come on, there's episodes of The Simpsons where they say, "Oh, he's driving
Yep,
A Hyundai," and other movies
garbage.
and stuff. But it really 2013 was the first time that people went, I don't know, maybe 2014 totally changed the game. Kia actually grabbed, I can't remember his name, Schreiber, I think. He was the guy who designed BMW for like 15 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know.
Um, and so he was award winning, world renowned, that like considered the best automobile designer. And they snagged him up, and wow, what a difference! And in the meantime, Hyundai was paying hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D to come up with their own designs for engine. And after a few failures, which we all know about now, they came up with much better designs. And so they've actually redesigned the CVT transmission and now call it an IVT. It uses a chain. And I can tell you after a year driving it, it's way more reliable, way better shifting, way faster to grab the power you need, and way quicker to shift back down. It makes everything work better. So they've done a marvelous job. And keep in mind, I have a 2018. If you have something that's newer, it's going to be even better. So
CVTs
anyway,
don't shift.
what's that?
CVTs don't shift.
You don't think they shift? Of course they shift. It's continuous shifting. It's not instantaneous shift. And yes,
It's
you
not a
can drive them
shift.
in a manual
It's not
mode.
a shift. Shifting is going from one gear to another.
Yeah,
They
and
don't
you know
shift. They
what?
don't go
It
from one
does
gear.
it does
You're right. They have expansion, contraction that changes the
it
ratios. It's
does
not a shift.
variable transmission. But here's what it feels like when you do the continuous variable transmission manual shift. It feels like you're driving not a DCT. You know what that is, right?
You can't manual
A
shift
dual clutch
constant
transmission,
velocity
because
transmission.
it changes so fast that it reacts almost as quick as a dual clutch transmission, which means you actually feel that jolt when you wanna get that down a gear or 2 and get that extra acceleration.
Okay.
You
Th
can't
th
do
this
that
is a
in a regular
conversation for
automatic.
another podcast.
It is.
'Cause
It is. It totally we're gone completely off the cuff on this one.
yeah,
But
it's
that's you
yeah,
know what? Maybe it's a Canadian versus American thing. Canadians like Hyundais and
yeah,
Americans are gonna stick with their found on road deads. I'm
yeah.
kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I
Uh,
yeah. Mhm.
all
Yeah,
right,
let's move on.
we'll skip the rest of this because we don't have as much time left as I originally wanted, and I just accidentally closed my application, when I'm actually trying to get into the other thing we were talking about, or we wanted to talk about, and we're gonna have less time to do it, unfortunately, um, is Canadian artistes that have infiltrated, if you will, American, media, in all aspects, really, from, plays, movies, television, music, everything. Um, so I'm actually just looking at a page that I think you sent me the page. Um, so, just mentioning a few names right off the bat. Elliot Page, for instance, if anybody remembers before he transitioned, was known by another name. I'm not gonna dead name anybody on the air. So, but, he
I
was,
had no idea of that. That
yeah,
was
well,
news to me.
he was, in, the movie Juno, playing
Right.
a female, the pregnant female at the time, of course. So, we'll move on from that just to keep anybody from getting all politically blah. I'm just saying I'm not dead naming anybody. Um, James Cameron. Everybody knows who James Cameron is. How many
Everybody
people
knows James Cameron.
how many
I did
people
not know he's
didn't know he was
Canadian.
Canadian? It
Well,
was
I'm sure there's a lot to do, but I did not know he was Canadian.
okay. So of the most successful directors of all time, would you say he was in the top 5?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, considering Avatar, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
d
I mean, yeah.
The Abyss, Aliens,
I mean,
Titanic,
you know, if a movie's directed by him, it's gonna be a good movie.
most of the time. I
Yeah,
would bank my money on that, yeah, but also
yeah,
usually gonna be a blockbuster that's gonna make a lot of money too, and have
yeah.
very good actors, and that's the key to it. He always makes sure that there are excellent actors in his movies. But yeah, that's another Canadian. Um, this is another one that not as many people are aware of unless they are familiar with the show True Blood, which at one time was pretty popular. But a lot of people who didn't see it don't really know as much about it right now. But Anna Paquin is another Canadian who, to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure she was born in Winnipeg. They moved to New Zealand, and then they just ended up in America. So her Canadian connection is really that she was born here. So I don't know why there's much to brag about there, other than she does have family in Winnipeg. And you know what the heck? I'll actually hold this right up to the camera. We don't even have to even need I say more. Whether you
Yeah,
like her
no,
or
I
not,
and I did know
she
she
is
was Canadian.
one of
Yeah,
the
it's
biggest
very well known.
superstars in the history of the music industry. She's up there
Yes.
with Cher. Like,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
literally, Cher knows her name just as much as she knows Cher's name. Cher may be the original diva, but this woman was second. So,
Yeah.
well, maybe not second. The that other woman, I can't remember her name, one with the beautiful voice. Um, big hits in the '80s and '90s, unfortunately passed away. I can't remember her name, but she's not
You
Canadian,
talking
so
about Whitney Houston?
yes, thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Whitney Houston. Yes,
Whitney would have
she
been the
was
second real diva, right? Like,
yeah,
actual diva, and she would have been much more of a diva had she unfortunately not passed, or if she hadn't passed away. But yeah,
yeah.
no, I was gonna say Avril Lavigne, who as is on the list. Everybody's heard of Avril Lavigne. She was massive in the '90s, huge, huge. And Chad Kroger, oh Nickelback.
I like Nickelback.
Funny thing is I don't mind their music that much. I'm not really a fan, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make out to be. It's just as soon as you say it, you expect people to go Nickelback. It's like they're supposed to hate them automatically, but yet these guys can go to an arena tomorrow and sell 18,000 tickets.
Yeah, easy.
So if
Yeah,
they
I
hate
like
them that bad,
Nickelback.
why? Uh,
Yeah.
all right, Dan Aykroyd.
Legend. Legendary.
There's got to be a lot of people that may not have known originally that he was Canadian for a long time, but by now
Oh,
I would actually
I knew he was Canadian. I
because
mean, I knew for a long time, maybe not right when he first come on the scene, but I knew he was Canadian.
yeah, he always talks about that. He's one of those Canadians that always mentions that he's Canadian. Can we skip over the
And he
next
had a
one?
little bit of an accent too. You can kinda hear it in his voice.
A little bit, yeah. I'm willing to skip over the next one. I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just okay. You know what? I shouldn't be that much of an ass hat. I don't want to be a hoser, eh? I'm just honestly not a fan of Drake. I I'm gonna say this
Yeah.
publicly. I don't care. Drake ruined rap because before Drake came along, everyone was rapping. You know, hip hop, hibbity, the hibbity, or whatever. You know, like Will Smith type stuff, or whatever. You know, somebody with the name Big in his name or something like that. But
Yeah,
when
I'm not a
Drake came
Drake fan.
along, I just went like, blah, 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 and everything just died. Whoops! I just hit a drum, and it's just monotone. And I'm not saying the guy isn't talented because if I had to try to have some kind of a talent competition with the guy, he would beat me hands down in just about anything. So if you happen to see this, Drake, I'm not putting you down as a human being, okay? Or trying to say you're not talented. I just would like to hear you actually use the talents that you have, a little bit more diversity added into it. So that said,
It's not my thing.
he probably wants to have me killed now, but he doesn't care. He didn't give two rats from a shit's ass. Anyways, you know, yeah, he's from Toronto, by the way. So, um, and he was on Degrassi. So, that's where he first got his first taste of fame. You've heard of Degrassi, I'm assuming. That was
Degrassi?
You haven't heard of it?
No.
Degrassi was a Canadian show. Actually started out, oh god, it was way back in the '80s or was it late '70s? I can't remember. But it was the kids of Degrassi Street. And interesting enough, when I first moved to Toronto, one of the first things I did was find out where Degrassi Street actually was because I heard it was a real street. And I took
How would I
3
know about that?
streetcars. What?
How would I know about that if it's a
Well,
Canadian
hang on.
street?
That's just the beginning of it. Let me get to it. I found Degrassi Street, realized that they filmed in the neighborhood, but definitely not on Degrassi Street. They probably never filmed on Degrassi Street. Anyways, a few years after that show ended, or a couple of years, they decided they could do a whole series around it, where these some of the kids, a couple of them would be older, and they would give them different roles instead of the same roles, rename the characters, whatever, and put them in junior high, and they called it Degrassi Junior High. Well, not only did it work out, but it got picked up on American television in syndication. Don't remember where, but it was a massive hit. So after 3 years, they said, "Well, what are we gonna do now? Do we gonna keep going and have different cast?" Well, they did add a few people because, you know, they went from 7 to 8 to 9, and then they had new 7 grade 7s and new grade 8s. So, "Well, we can't change everybody. Let's just take our main cast that we've had for 3 years, including a couple of people who were different characters, but from the original show, and move them into Degrassi High." So, of course, the vice principal, or sorry, the teacher that was their homeroom teacher became their principal in the new school. And Degrassi High was born, which was a
Never heard of
massive
it.
bigger. You've heard of it?
Never heard of it.
Oh, never heard of it. And
Nope.
then after that, of course, they had some other thing, Degrassi Talks or whatever it was. And a few years later, they came up with the Degrassi, the New Year's, or Degrassi, the new show, or whatever it was. And it ran for, I don't know if it's still running, but it was on for years. And they would actually change it. Drake was in that newer version. So it was, it still had tie-ins to the original because a couple of the original characters came back as the mothers, fathers, and teachers of the new students. So there's some played mothers and or fathers, and other ones.
This isn't Degrassi podcast, so let's
I'm mentioning it because Drake. He was
I
an
know, I'm
actor.
just messing with
I'm
you.
gonna
You
I'm gonna skip over anybody I don't recognize as being a superstar, by the way.
yeah, I
They might be
don't
famous, but if they're not a superstar, I don't really. You know what? I do want to actually mention somebody because this is all like most of these people are younger. Kirsten, Hayden Christensen is not Canadian. What? Are you telling me Anakin Skywalker's Canadian? How would I not know that?
What are you talking about?
Darth Vader is Canadian?
Where do
Hayden
you see that?
Hayden Christensen, best known as Anakin Skywalker, aka young Darth Vader in Star Wars Episode 2 and 3. Vancouver born.
Oh, you skipped way ahead.
Wow. Well, I told you I was skipping to something because they're not superstars. But you know what?
You don't know Eric McCormick of Will and Grace? Bro.
Wait, he's on Will and Grace?
Yes.
Oh my God, I didn't
recognize him.
I read the name and I didn't look at the face. No, you know what? I do know him, yeah. He's actually very funny.
Okay, that's why I didn't follow you, but okay. So,
right.
I didn't know
Fair enough.
your Darth Vader.
And as for George Stroumboulopoulos, does anybody outside of Canada know that guy? Other than famous people, because famous people get interviewed by him. Famous people get interviewed by him all the time. So every famous person knows who he is. But if you're not famous, you probably don't unless you're Canadian. Jason Reitman. That makes sense.
Well, let's go back to the Darth Vader. That's probably why I think I hear when he says, "I am your father," he follows it with a. No, just kidding.
Well, okay. I'm glad that you decided to blow your jokes so horribly because he never said that. When I said he was Darth Vader, I meant that in jest because his character becomes Darth Vader, but you never hear his voice as Darth Vader.
It was
know who the voice of Darth Vader is.
It was on par with your. Is she gonna call me? So
okay, fair enough. We're getting into that.
Moving on. Jim Carrey.
Maybe. I'm not even sure. Well, Jim Carrey's obvious. Let's not even bother.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, he's the GOAT. And that's all there is to it.
He's awesome.
But going back years into music for specifically, you've heard of Bachman Turner Overdrive. God, tell me you've heard of Bachman Turner Overdrive. Okay. Yes. BTO. All Canada, right? Randy Bachman, of course, was also part of the Guess Who, the original Guess Who, which were all Canadian, all from Winnipeg specifically. There's lots of other Canadians. We already mentioned a couple of them in Celine Dion and Avril Lavigne. There's a whole bunch of Canadian groups and the band. I don't know if you remember Up on Cripple Creek. She sends me if I speak. That's the band, Canadian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, the band was formed originally as part of what was it called? Ronnie Hawkins and the something. I can't remember what the something was. And Ronnie Hawkins eventually, and he stayed in Canada for several years, selling out bars and small clubs and stuff, and eventually decided to move back down south and do his country thing back down south. And these guys stayed together and said, let's just call ourselves something else. And I can't remember. I think the story went is they didn't have a name officially, or it was written down incorrectly. And so they just were written down as the band. And they said, hey, that works. And they became one of the greatest rock groups of their era. The band.
Yeah.
So that is basically
very good. Look at Justin Bieber. I mean,
you know what? I tried not. I'm sorry. On behalf of all of Canada, I think we could end the podcast with saying, on behalf of all of Canada, we are sorry about Biebs.
That's okay, because you gave us Keanu Reeves, legend.
Yeah, goddamn right. And William Shatner and Scotty. Mr. Scott, James Doohan himself.
Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah.
Yep. And Donald Sutherland, obviously.
Martin Short, hilarious. Love Canada. Michael Bublé.
Ray Don Chung was born in Canada.
Did not know
Michael Bublé, yes, of course, obviously. And there's many others, but we're going to say thank you very much for watching, or if you were just listening, thank you very much for listening. And we're gonna talk about some really fun things over the next few weeks, and some more serious ones. So tune in again next week for United We Stand, Divided We Podcast. I'm Lionel McClintock in Canada, and
Robert from the U.S., and we'll catch you later.
Have a good one.